On today's episode of Accelerating Excellence, we have Rahul Moodgal. Rahul Moodgal is an absolute rocket. He's one of the most respected investor professionals in finance. As a partner at TCI, he claimed the crown for raising the most amount of capital in the shortest period of time, $20 billion in 3.5 years. He also delivered the largest country fund launch, $1 billion for the India fund, TCI New Horizon, and the largest sector fund launch in history, $1.1 billion for sector-specific fund, Algebris. Prior to his work in investing, Rahul was an academic. He studied across 19 universities in the UK, US, Japan, and Russia. He's a qualified counsellor, bartender, musician, English teacher, interior designer, DJ, and music therapist. You could also say a playful, self-improving individual with a growth mindset. Today, Rahul works independently, helping activist managers across the world develop their businesses. He's also a partner at $10 billion European public equities giant Parvis, and Rahul is heavily involved in multiple charities, including WizKids, Mulberry Bush, to name a few. He's a patron of Team GB, the Triangle Playground School, and chair of the board of Scientific Adventures for Girls, and an active fundraiser for the British Red Cross, as well as being co-founder for Capital Allocators University. In this episode, we discuss Rahul's incredible journey, exceptional leadership, and doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. I hope you enjoy. Rahul Moodgal, welcome to Accelerating Excellence.
Hi, James. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here, especially having read your book recently. So thanks for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. I wanted to start by asking you where it all began for you.
Oh, it's an interesting question because I think when you're on your journey, you always think there's a moment at where it all begins, where you can sort of trace back the point at which you either got your mojo or an idea came to you, or you sort of thought, I'm going to take over the world, or whatever it is. It didn't really happen for me like that. I just don't know. I just remember just plodding along, enjoying life. But something changed, I would say, when I started doing my A-levels, because at school I was really involved in community and being school prefect, head of year prefect, all that sort of stuff. I did okay in my GCSEs, not amazing, and then did my A-levels, but I was predicted really terrible grades. But I loved school. I loved my teachers. I loved my subjects. And I was predicted E/U's for my
Wow.
my A-levels.
Inspiring from the teachers there. Yeah.
Well, I look back and I sort of think, well, maybe they were right, or maybe it was a kick in the butt that I needed. But in those days, you had PCAS and UCA, so you had either polytechnics or universities. They weren't kind of part of one system, so you were able to apply for either one or the other. And I was told you're not smart enough to apply for university, so you apply for polytechnics. So I applied for polytechnics, applied for 4, I got into 1, and then I just don't know what happened. Something inside me said, I know I can do better than what I've been served. So that's really, really worked really, really hard. And then ended up getting A's and B's for my A-levels. And then thought,
fantastic.
Maybe I can apply to university. So I applied to university. At that time, I wanted to be a diplomat. And I went to Keele because I wanted to do the opposite of what I'd done my whole life, which was live in London, busy, crazy, crowded, full of energy, and go somewhere that was a complete opposite. And at that time, Keele was a fully campus-based university in Stoke-on-Trent with 3,500 students living on campus in the middle of the countryside. So I sort of thought I wanted to experience that and just do something that was the total reverse of what I'd known my whole life. And Keele did an amazing degree in international relations, and I applied for it through clearing, and I got on, and just went from there really, and did my undergrad, loved it, had a great time, made some of my best friends, and then thought, okay, I want to do some more studying. I thought, well, I really put my mind to something. My dad had this obsession about me going to Cambridge, um, because he grew up in India, born in the 30s, lived through sort of independence and stuff. And Nehru was his hero. And Nehru went to Cambridge, and he's like, why don't you try and go to Cambridge? And I thought, okay, let's see. And I went as a kid with him to sort of look at it all. And obviously it was amazing and in awe of it all. And I applied and I got in and I couldn't believe it. And did the course. I loved the course, made some great friends again. It was absolutely fascinating. Worked with, Nobel Peace Prize winning academics, economists, stuff like that. It was just amazing. But
What a development trajectory, by the way, from predicted ease to PhD Cambridge. It's incredible, right?
it's I look back and it's sort of been one thing now. It's planted a seed, and it's something, and the main firm that I work with, Parvis, is something that we implement. And I think, when you hire someone, everyone's saying, let's look at their CV, let's look at what they've done. And we're very lucky to have worked with a number of the best US universities. And David Swenson is, the renowned god of investing, especially the endowment model.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with him, through working with the manager I worked with, and my previous manager I worked with, and I worked with TCI. And every year he'd say the same thing. A track record doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you about hindsight, what's happened in the past. It tells you nothing about in the future. And I think actually what's more important is finding someone who's resilient, who's overcome some adversity in their life, who's really fought up against someone who's either tried to stop them from doing something, or something that's personally had them in a situation where they're unlikely candidate to be successful. And to me, that's really what you want, because you can teach people new skills and how to do a job. But that sort of thing, I think, has been something that has lit a fire in my belly, I'd say, and made me think, it doesn't matter actually if I try and it doesn't work. Because again, I worked really hard on my A-levels, because the key thing was making sure my mind, okay, even if I don't get the grades I want to get, at least I've given it 200%.
Mm-hmm.
And so the effort is worth the reward, right? When you've got kids and you think about, what's the one thing you say to your kids all the time? Put 200% effort into it, right? It doesn't matter if the results are not good, but if you've given it your best, that's all that matters. So I think that kind of puts the whole context on, going back to your original question, where did it all start? I think that was kind of the start of, I can do this. It doesn't matter if I fail, but no one's going to tell me I can't do it. And if I don't do it, it doesn't matter. But, believe in yourself.
Absolutely. And it sounds like there were some powerful feedback loops there as well, because guess what? You put in some effort and you achieve some incredible loops. And I think that's one of the most, it's such a shame, because I think there's so many people that, because you have to put in the effort first to see and feel the rewards for putting in effort, so many stay dormant, sort of waiting. Well, if you give me the result, then I'll invest the effort. And it's, unfortunately, it comes the other way around. But yeah, thankfully not for you. So it seems like you've got this passion for learning, full stop, because obviously you you studied all over the world, right? You that was something you really, again, 200% effort. And I've even heard rumors that you're qualified in all sorts of things, from bartending, musicians, amongst many other things. Are you fluent, almost fluent in Russian too? Is it?
Yeah.
So there's a
Well,
learning.
it's rusty
Like
now.
it's
Yeah,
got to be
yeah.
like something with learning for you as well.
I think we have a mindset, right? When you go through life, you have your education, you have your career, you have your life, and people have this mindset that you just stop learning once you leave school or university. I think I'm always curious, I always want to learn, but the thing that changed for me is that when I started working in finance, to do a lot of learning, because it's a completely new career, moving from academia where you're always learning. The thing about finance is that it's constantly moving. So you have to be aware of what's going on, have an opinion, think about the impact of different things, whether they're financial, they're political, they're social, whatever they may be. But I also thought, when you're so immersed in finance and working all the time, you need to sort of make sure you have time for yourself. And I'm not very good at that, or I haven't been very good at that historically. So what I started to do, when I worked for TCI, it was an amazing 5 years, but it was very, very intense. So every year I said to myself, I'm going to go off and I'm going to do something I'm interested in learning about, or that I've always had an interest in, but never had the time to do. So all sorts of crazy stuff, DJing and music production, did a TEFL, did interior design, private investigation. When I studied in the States, I did a Master of Mixology where you do an exam on how to bartend. And it sounds crazy, like, why isn't there an exam in that? It's actually two parts to it. You have a very qualified sort of bartender who sits there with you in front of an audience of 100 people and says, right, Rahul, what's on the speed rail there? Make me this and this. And he watches how you make the drink, because you're not allowed to put the glass in the ice, because that's the first no-no, and people do that, and the glass cracks and the ice is gone to waste, right? You pick up the bottle, and the bottles will have a pourer on them. Do you hold the pourer when you drop it, or you just top the bottle and the pourer drops out? So it's all these minor little techniques, and what's the ratio of drinks you put in, what's your mannerisms, and then you do a US government exam after that, which looks at how alcohol affects your blood and you as a human being and your activities and all that sort of stuff. So
Wow.
it's an amazing thing to do, and I love doing it. But it's a serious thing, because you have to take it seriously. And then I just carried on doing different things all the time, and did stained glass design, and so I think it's really, really important to just keep your brain active. The brain's a muscle, so you have to just keep it
100%.
moving. Yeah.
And one of my observations, actually, it's so interesting you say that, is I've come across quite a few individuals across industries, but also in finance, particularly traders, who, as soon as they start to generate a certain P&L consistently, the development mindset that got them there is almost parked, and it's more just maintenance and count the checks. And then you see these the individuals, the outliers within their peer group, that really burst through and go to these ridiculous levels. They're the ones that are able to sustain that mindset that I think you were talking about there.
I think that's right, and I think also the thing that people forget, there's so much cross-pollination between different disciplines in life, and you learn from one, you put it in the other, and all the rest of it.
Absolutely.
Just having those different perspectives on things is really good. To activate your creative part of your mind is really good for thinking about how you interact with human beings. What's the creative way to interact with someone that's not the normal way, or whatever it may be. So I think
Absolutely.
that's a really good thing that comes out of doing these different courses.
Absolutely fascinating. And Rahul, can I bring it back to that
Yeah.
pivot? So you're excelling in academia, you're traveling the world. At what point did you think finance, or at what point did finance become an option for you?
I didn't. So I carried on the academic career, and then I was working on a British government project which was focused on the Pacific Ocean region, and its relationship with the relationship between different countries in the region. And my speciality um, at the postgraduate research level was on Japan and its relationship with Russia. And I got pulled into that project, had a brilliant time. But after that, I wanted to be back in London. I was doing a PhD course in London at LSE. I was teaching at my old university at Keele in Stoke-on-Trent, and I was living at Birmingham doing this postdoc research fellowship. So it was crazy. It was three things at once, just driving all over the place, doing all sorts of things. And it's great. And I just kind of wanted to have some sort of calm and stability and be in one place. And I just thought the academic stuff is great, but I just wanted more. And I didn't know what I wanted, to be honest. So I just applied for loads and loads of jobs, and did loads of interviews, management consultant staff, working with sort of a tech startup, a very infamous oil company that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
It was great. It was a very good experience for me to sort of learn about interviewing and then meet people and think about what I wanted to do. Um, but I applied for this one job, which looked interesting, but I had no idea um, what it would actually entail. But the thing that attracted me was the looking after clients part
Okay.
because I loved the human interaction.
Yeah.
Um, and I went for the interview. And I said a few of the right things that aligned with what they wanted to hear without even realizing it. And they,
Would you go into these interviews just being yourself, or would you try and because a lot of people obviously try and hack the interview, right? They're like, what do they want to hear? What's this? So were you really just truly exploring and sort of,
had no idea, to be honest, how to interview. Um, I read this McKinsey book about interview techniques, and you know, I'm not a religious person, but I'm kind of a fatalist, and I definitely believed in fate when I read that book because three of the questions that I read in there got asked to me in the interview.
okay,
What's the angle on the hands on the clock when it's 3:15? Why is a manhole cover round? The third question I can never remember. Um, so I was able to answer all the questions. So I looked smarter, not because I knew it, but just because I'd read about it.
yeah,
Um, and then I realized, oh, there's a technique here. But I also sort of thought, I want people to work with me because of me, not because who they think I am, but who I really am. And so
absolutely,
I always try and do that, but you have to also put on your game face, right?
of course,
I think through your career, as you get older and you move up the career ladder, you're able to relax more because you want to have that balance and be with the people you want to be with and do the things you want to do. So it's really important that you lay down what your values are and how you think and the way you do things. But when you start out, you have to sort of fit into a mold of a culture and an organization and do things the way they want to do. I think once you've established yourself, then you can sort of say, well, can we think about this? And they'll say why, and then you can sort of throw the ideas because you've got a bit of experience about what's working and what's not working, or you can bring an academic perspective onto why they're doing things this way and that way and all the rest of it. So I think that's kind of an interesting way to put it.
yeah. And then so you embark on this career in finance. At what point do you start to think, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
I never thought I was good at it. What I thought is that I loved it. That's the
Okay, yeah.
um,
What
I
specifically did you love about the role initially?
every single day I was learning something. Every single day I was given more and more responsibility. Every single day I was interacting with human beings who are working for some of the most amazing missions, number one, and then also some huge blue chip brands in the world. So that was all what was just fascinating. But being the point of contact with these people, be able to talk to them and explain things to them. And the guy who hired me, Mark Williams, who's still my mentor today, he was the one who sort of taught me the frameworks for doing this job and how to do it, how to think about it, the things that are acceptable, the things that are not acceptable. And I still use those today. And I
Right.
still remind him when I see him, Mark, remember you taught me this, you remember taught me that? And he says, Rahul, you remember, I don't remember. So and it had a huge impact on me and how I do things and think about things. But the thing is, I just love the human interaction thing. The firm that I worked at with him, TT International, was a great firm. It was the best boot camp you could ever imagine. It was a very small firm when I joined, and it grew huge very quickly. Um, I was there from 1998 to 2004, and over that time, we went from like just over 1 billion to over 20 billion. It was huge. And there was a lot to new products, new people, growth of the business, new offices and everything. And there became a point where I knew I wouldn't be able to go any further within that organization because they had to bring in more senior people to take the business to a different level. And I didn't have that experience.
Okay.
Uh, so at
Okay.
that point, yeah.
And sorry to interrupt. What
Yeah.
do you think was unique about some of the conditions that enabled that growth, whether it was the team or the market at the time,
I think
certain
just
mindsets or attitudes that enabled that? Because that's incredible growth.
It's incredible growth. I think I always say it to everyone that I help today, all of those people are refugees from big organizations. And when you're a refugee from a big organization, you leave to build something the way you want to build it.
Okay.
And not just the way you build it, but how you build it. So the processes that you put in place. And the initial early days were about rolling up your sleeves and getting involved. And it was really easy because we all sat on one floor. So it was easy to walk around and go and speak to the ops guys, the finance guys, the IT guys, the compliance guys, and just really get your teeth into what's going on. I think the unique role and opportunity for being in that IR function is that you have to understand every aspect of what's going on in an organization.
Mm.
You have to be able to explain it. So if someone calls you up and say, who are your trading counterparties? You have to know them. Or how do you settle a trade? Or what are your compliance procedures? So you have to just know everything that's going on. What's in the portfolio? So you had to just get up and walk around. And so it was really easy to roll your sleeves up and just get involved in absolutely everything, really, or not. And I think that was a culture that was embedded early on. And that's why the organization grew very quickly. It also had very talented people. I mean, James Tonner in particularly was an absolute legend there. He ran Fidelity International Left School at 16, went to Fidelity and just grew this business from nothing. And, you know, total rock star. And there was other people like Henry Bedford, who, you know, if you read the history of Goldman Sachs, there's like 8, 10 pages just written about him. So
Wow.
working with people like that was amazing to sort of learn from and just be around and listen. You know, you think about one of the big things today for young people that they don't get is what you and I used to get is all the banter being in the office 5 days a week, right? And listening. You don't always learn from just what you're being told, it's what you hear, right? And you're able to ask questions. Why did you say that? Or why is that way and everything? And
Yeah.
just being around that the whole time, you just picked up and picked up. So
Just those micro exchanges here and there that feel
yeah,
like nothing, but are actually across time, they compound. They're huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
huge. And so I think all of those things culminating was the reason that it really worked. All of those guys had come from Fidelity, from Goldman, from UBS, from Nomura, wherever it may be. And they just sort of thought, you know, we've got a group of talented people here. We want to build something and do it. And they did a great job doing it.
And did you
So,
feel that camaraderie on that journey? Did it really feel
yeah,
like a team?
absolutely. Absolutely. But that was sort of installed in us as well.
Okay.
But it was just they were great recruiters. They hired such talent. And, you know, I'm friends with a lot of those people still today, whether they worked in the ops or IT or finance function or compliance, whatever. You know, it's just friends with all those people still today. And it's just great to be able to retain those friendships, but also to talk about the old days of how it
Absolutely.
used to be. And, you know, you go to the pub on Fridays after work and everything and think about the archaic systems of faxing things to clients rather than actually emailing them.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, it's amazing.
Incredible. And but then it sounds like you also had this, and was it an intuition or a gut feeling, or was it really logic that you didn't perceive there was this, you felt like it was time to change?
I think it was two things. I think, first of all, I thought I can stay here and have an easy life. I don't want an easy life. And secondly, I sort of thought, well, I've got to try something else. I think when I first joined the firm, I thought I'd stay there forever. I really did because I loved it so much and it was great. I still loved it at the end, but I just knew for me, I needed more. And off I went and I made my first big misstep into I met a lot of people and um, interviewed with a lot of different organizations, but I sort of interviewed with one and I thought this is the right opportunity for me. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And I knew within 6 months I wasn't going to stay there forever.
Okay.
And yeah, pretty soon after that, I decided to resign. But it came coincidentally at a time when a gentleman who again is a big influence on me called Peter Milne, who's one of the best headhunters that I've ever met in my life,
Right.
who called me up one day when I was leaving TT saying, hey, Rahul, my name's Peter Milne, I work at Robert Walters. I've got an amazing opportunity for you. Can we meet? I said, I'm sorry, I've just signed the contract and taken on your job. He said, well, can I keep your number? I said, yeah, please do. And then he phoned me 6 months later and said, "Hey, do you remember me?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "How's it going?" I said, "I'm really unhappy." And he said, "Okay, let's meet." And in those days, there was a chain called Benji's. I don't know if you remember it. And they used to do these hot Ribenas, and just went and met him, and we had a hot Ribena, and he sat there smoking. And he said, "Look, there's this amazing opportunity. Here's the job description." And I looked, I went, "And this is my dream job." And I said, "Who's it for?" He said, I'm not going to tell you who it's for, because I want you to want the job, not want to work for the firm. It's a very different thing.
Okay.
I respect him so much for that. Still to this day, we joke about it.
Yeah, that's class.
And I went away and had to think about it. And I said, "Okay, yeah." And he told me who it was for. And he said, "It's for Chris Hong." And I went, "Well, there's no way I'm going to get that job." And he said, "I really think you've got a good chance." So I went in, met Chris. He said, "I'll meet you afterwards." And we met up again. And he said, "How did it go?" And I was in there for over 2 hours. I met the COO, Doug Shaw, again, a massive influence on me. And then I met Chris, and we just hit it off. And Chris asked me for some references, and I said to him, "Why don't I give you names of investors and you tell me if you know them?" Tried to play hardball. And we came up with a list of 10. And he said, "I'll call half of them tonight, and I'll come back to you." And he called me the next day and said, "Come back and see me." And yeah, went through the process, and yeah, it was great. And I just felt it was an amazing opportunity, but I was a deer in headlights. And even I joke now with some of the clients I'm really close to who met me then and said, "Rahul, do you remember your first week, month of your time at TCI?" I said, "Absolutely." And they're like, literally, it was like, "Here you go. This is all yours. Deal with it now." I joined on the Monday. On the Wednesday, we had a meeting with the University of Notre Dame, who I'd known from my time at TT. And it's Chris, myself, their chief investment officer, and their investment committee doing a meeting. And that was the only meeting that I sat in with Chris at the beginning to learn. And then after that, he said, "It's all yours now." I thought,
Wow.
okay, wow. But it was the best opportunity of my life, and it was incredible.
Unbelievable. And it's how interesting though that first month again, it's like ironically the dream role, but with the dream comes being chucked in the deep end again. And again, it's another powerful message, I think, for anyone listening that, if you want to go for your dream, then sometimes you're going to have to throw yourself in, right up that edge of the panic zone, but well into the adaptive zone in terms of testing your abilities and surrounding yourself with people like that as well. It sounds like people is something that's been a key part of your journey. You've obviously referred to quite a few people that have impacted you. There's a question I love to ask guests on the podcast, and it's if you could pick one elite performer you've worked with to compete for your life, who would it be and why? In terms of just absolute competence and mindset. Is there anyone that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, I would go. There's a lot,
Yeah.
but I would go back to my mentor just because
Yeah.
he was such a tough taskmaster. And I remember him saying things to me like, "Oh, I'm never going to be happy. Uh, I'm always going to change something." I used to write these reports because I came from the academic background, and he'd always change something, even when I thought I'd got it right. And then he had a fellow here in New York who sort of ran the US part of it. He was even tougher, even though he's American, his precision on English language. These guys used to beat me up all the time, not physically, but just, and you sort of think, am I ever going to get this right? And it went and it went and it went. And, I remember one day we were doing this report to educate US clients about the EU and what it was. And it was a 3-part series. I did the first one, it was red pen all over it. The second one, less red pen. The third one, no comments. I think I've never been so happy in my life. And David Ballon was the name of the gentleman in New York, another big influence on me, said to me, "Rahul, you finally understood what I've been saying to you all this time." And I just said, "David, I'm just so happy you got no comments."
in hindsight, because I imagine in the moment that must have been infuriating at times. But in hindsight, is that one of the best things that happened to you, having that being
Yeah,
standards enforced upon you?
all the time, all the time. But it reminded me of my dad. My dad was the same, absolutely all the time, just on it, on it, on it. Never ever let our guard drop. Never, just got to be on it 200%. You know, I'm relaxed about it now because I'm generally more aware of what I need to do.
Sure.
Though, I mean, wow. I mean, sitting with Mark was just amazing. Hearing him, pitch to amazing organizations, being part of the process, understanding what needs to be done to win clients over, look after them, what are the acceptable rules of conduct, what is not acceptable, it was just the gold standard from the beginning.
Incredible.
Things like, never be an arsehole, you meet everyone twice. It's the best piece of guidance you can ever get. When someone says that early on, you're like, you know what, you're right. And lucky for me, I listened, because some of those people who were analysts early on, when I went to work for TCI, you know what, they were CIOs, and I was working with them. And we still remember when we were all young, and we joke about it and say, hey, do you remember me filling out that RFP for you and everything, and you and me having a conversation? It's just, it's incredible. So when you grow up with people, it's something that has a big impact on who you are, right? It's kind of when you grow up as a kid, the things you learn in your family and in your culture, or the way things happen at your school, or with your friends, are things that are part of who you are, right?
Sure.
And for me, I grew up in finance at TT, sitting with Mark and David in particular, and there were others as well, but they sometimes you felt like you're caught in a boxing match between the two, because they were both just sticklers for perfection, for absolutely doing everything right. And they had grown this little known firm, that most people never heard of, to run money for some of the most amazing institutions in the world, out of nothing. And so for me, I had a lot to learn. They didn't have the brand that the shops they came from had. They built that brand based on the performance that the firm had and the products they sold, and they were able to capture all these amazing organizations. So you then understand that learning that, having that edge, and actually being a brand is not really what it's about. You can make your brand, and you learn those things from there. The big lesson that I'll take away from that is about having an edge and being different, and how that culminated. It was actually the very first day that I started the job. And Mark said to me, do you realize 2,000 people applied for this job and you got it? I went, what? And he said to me, I don't know if you remember, but you sent your resume in on orange paper. And I thought, I did. I ran out of white paper. And he said there was a pile of white CVs on my desk, and in the middle of them was this orange CV, this orange bit of paper with a CV on it. And I thought, whoever's got the guts to send me a CV on orange paper, I've got to go to. He said, yours was the first one I went to. So I thought, okay, so actually trying to stand out, be different, and capture someone's attention is really something to do.
How interesting. Fate again. Incredible.
Exactly.
And how do you think the industry's changed in respect to characters like David and Mark? Do you think there's enough of that today? Do you think the pendulum shifted a bit? Do you think standards are enforced the way they were, or are they enforced enough? I appreciate it's a very broad question.
No. It's a great question, but I think a lot of things have happened. Okay, so the industry's matured a lot, and it's been institutionalized. So there are a lot more rules and rigor and frameworks that not are just that operate at the firm level, but operate at the industry level, and obviously the regulatory level. So those have to be sort of enforced. I think there's so much competition now, that it's just harder and harder to differentiate yourself and to really stand out. So if you try and do that, you really have to have a reason. The world doesn't need another fund or another firm. So if you're setting one up, you have to have a reason for why you're doing it. Those guys were just innovators. And I'm sure there are plenty of people, I don't want to take away from anyone who's having the same experience as I had today, who's got mentors that they look up to and learn from and everything. But I think a lot of the old guard, they grew up as that industry was growing and evolving and emerging. And what's amazing about working in finance is that people are just so innovative. If a bit of regulation comes up, they'll find a way around it. They'll create a new product. If there's a new opportunity, they'll find a way around it. Look at AI, look at crypto, and look at, all these kind of new opportunities, new silos for making money. People always find ways to work around it. But I think there'll always be those people. But I think when you've learned things the hard way, literally pushing paper, and you sort of become revolutionized and you move from analog to digital, those people had something special because they were learning while everything was changing, right? I joined TT in 1998. We had LTCM, we had the Russian crisis, then we had the dot-com bubble, then we had 9/11, and it was just constant. The whole world was moving the whole time, and they had so many things to learn from. But you speak to these guys and they talk about, the Latin American debt crisis in the early 90s and things like that, in the 80s, what happened with Reaganomics and stuff. They lived through a completely different era of all the amazing things that happened. The Berlin Wall fell down, collapse of communism, all this stuff. So much happens. There's a lot more stuff happens in the world today, but it happens quicker, and it seems like its impact is shorter. In those days, it was just colossal. These guys had lived through a lot of things.
Sorry to interrupt, but before we dive deeper into the conversation, I want to express how grateful I am that you're choosing to spend your time here. I also want to take a moment to ask for your support. I want to bring you the best podcast I can. And by hitting that like button, subscribing to the podcast, or a one-click review, you play a vital role. When you hit that like button, leave a rating or subscribe, you enable the podcast to reach a much wider audience. And the wider our audience, the easier it is for guests within my network to convince their agents and management teams to free up their diary and come on our show. Thank you in advance for your likes, reviews, and subscriptions. Now let's get you back to leveling up. And, we all know some of the individuals listening to this aren't from a finance background and sort of maybe have grown up with the movie version of finance, that's management. And we see the sexy, exciting stuff. It's also, I think everyone knows that it's an industry full of some of the highest IQ, hardest working individuals. But is there anything that you think people misunderstand about asset management and investment management, full stop?
There's lots of things. I think a lot of people think it's just evil and it's bad and everyone's just greedy and just wants money. We've got a lot of good people in this industry. Look, there's good and bad in every industry, I would say.
Of course.
But those are more about individuals than industries. I think there's a lot of good that comes out of this industry. There's a lot of good movements, missions, a lot of philanthropic adventures, and people doing a lot of good and giving back and learning. And I just sort of think there's also opportunities for people who come from a lot less privileged backgrounds who are able to get into this industry, who are able to change their own lives and their families' lives that perhaps would not have been able to if they hadn't got into this industry. So there's a lot of interesting things that go on, and it's fascinating. But I think also these people are adding significantly to the UK economy, to the workforce.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of misconception that these guys just make loads of money and just keep it for themselves. There's people like that in every industry again, but these people do a lot of good. There's a lot of very good people in this industry. Some of the best friends I have are in this industry, and they do a lot of good stuff in this world. And they're just kind people and good people. And they're just everyday, ordinary people, really, So plenty of my friends who work in finance don't have any formal qualifications or didn't go to university or everything. They work their way up. Left school at 16 and just worked their way up. And that was one of the great things that Margaret Thatcher brought to, the finance industry. She liberalized it and opened it up so, people from any background could get into the industry. It wasn't elitist like it used to be.
It's one of the things I love about the industry, how it is truly meritocratic in that respect, isn't it? It's very results based, and it can be an advantage sometimes to have a great degree from a good university to get into an organization, but it's ultimately about the individual and what they're able to deliver.
Totally. And I think it's changing, James, to be honest. I think having an Oxbridge degree doesn't get you in anymore. It's more about, back to what we talked about early on, about being resilient and actually someone who's willing to say, listen, I don't have the best degree from the best organization, but I'm willing to work really, really hard and prove myself. And so more of those people are getting opportunities today than they ever have. And people
Yeah, it's
want to
brilliant.
have people with different lived experiences to try and get better outcomes. So, people are saying, right, let's have a cross section of people from different backgrounds, different universities, and bring them all together and just see if we can do a better job as an organization. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good trend. I think democratizing access to anything is a win for everyone. I do have to ask this question. In terms of your career, is there a moment that stands out as what I would describe as a peak experience for you from a performance perspective, where perhaps it was yourself or the team you were in, where you just maybe it was a single meeting, maybe it was a month or a year, but where, when we talk about elite performance and people just doing what they're there to do at an exceptionally high level, is there a moment that stands out for you?
I always talk about this one moment that happened in April 2008, and I landed in Hong Kong, and Chris Home called me and said, it was a Thursday night, and he said, can you get me 800 million by Monday morning? I said, okay, fine. I went to bed. I woke up on Friday. I stayed on the phone for 24 hours. I phoned him on Saturday and said, got 800 million coming on Monday. That was one of the best
Mm.
moments ever,
That is
because
insane.
it was it was a crazy time. It was an insane time. The ability to raise money was easy. Chris had an incredible track record, had an amazing opportunity to investing in Visa at the time,
Okay.
and I was able to explain it, rationalize it, and pick up the phone and call people and say, hey, we're here, let's do it. So that for me was amazing.
Incredible. And do you think that was the ability to deliver that performance, which is insane, by the way, in such a condensed time frame? I mean, it's just mind-boggling. But is that actually the summation of, have you been putting down the groundwork to enable that to happen for years,
James, you hit
to
it on the
build
head.
that trust?
That's
Because the only
exactly
word
right.
that stood into my mind there when you were saying that, the trust people must have in you and the organization to do that like that, that only comes with trust, right?
100%. And I think this is the big misconception that people have about successful people. It's that old iceberg analogy, right? They just see the tip of the iceberg sticking
Yeah.
out of the water. They don't understand all the hard work that goes on underneath. Um, Friends of mine say to me, "Oh, our fund's closed now. I'm not speaking to anyone." I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Why do you travel all the time?" Why? Because you never stop speaking to people. You're always laying down foundations, roots, building relationships. Some of them take a really long time. I know post-COVID, any client that I've managed to win to a relationship with, to work with, even some of them I've known for a long time, it's taken anything from 18 months to 7 years, because you just got to work at it. You've got to understand that this is not about what's important to you, it's about what's important to them and just getting on their agenda. They have so many other things going on, particularly post-COVID, that they're dealing with. So back in those days, it was making sure that I stayed in front of people, even though we were closed. They knew what we were doing. They knew why we were doing it. They knew what the opportunity set was. So I had a conversation with them. I shared information with them. And it's the same thing. And I still believe in that today. And it's the same way I think about this, like about human relationships, right? If you want to have a friendship or relationship with someone, you have to invest in it, right?
Mm.
It's the same thing if you're doing business with someone. It's human relationships. At the end of the day, you want something, you've got to invest in it. But people don't see that. And the unfortunate thing today, particularly when you think about social media and how things are going, is that more and more people are becoming more and more short term. And
Mm.
I think about duration, not execution. That's literally how I think about it. Everyone's going digital. You know what? I'm going to go analog and do the opposite, because it's the only way you make an impression. So when everyone wants to sort of find a database and go through and see who they're going to email, I'm going to get on a plane and go and speak to people, because
Wow.
you're going to appreciate the time you've made to go and see them, the fact that you've traveled to see them, sit down with them, have a conversation with them, understand who they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're thinking. It's going to win you just more time with someone, more face-to-face time, more understanding, more openness.
Amazing. And yeah, it certainly feels like a lot of people think that sending an email or liking a message is they're ticking the box in terms of technically I have communicated with someone. And I think they sometimes forget that communication is, like you said, it's about the person. It's about confirming that they understand whatever the message is, whether it's you, like you've just said there, educating them about some new information in relation to the fund or the market or anything that might be useful to them, I guess. But it's making it about them and ensuring it's actually communicated right, rather than just, well, I sent an email with an attachment on it that outlined that. It's just not enough, is it, to compete at that level?
And you've got to think that everyone else is doing the same thing,
Absolutely.
right? So how do you stand out?
Would you be that orange slice of paper? Yeah,
Exactly.
amazing. Wow, what a result as well. What was Chris's reaction out of interest when you gave him the news?
Well, I mean, he was very happy. I think in those days, I think it got to a point where, touch wood, I never didn't deliver. So,
Amazing.
but it was an amazing opportunity set that he gave me, and an amazing chance, and was able to do it. And we did loads of amazing things together in those days. It was incredible. The largest sector fund launch in history. Two guys never even worked together. One had never even been an investor, right? The largest country fund launch in history as well. It did loads of things. It was amazing. It was just
There were a lot of records broken. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's having. It wasn't about me. It was about having the right platform. And to me, it's about the alignment between the person you're working for and the way you want to do things, and just making sure that they're aligned with each other. Because then you're in your happy place. You're not constantly fighting someone for what is the priority and what's important, right? It's a really important balance to get. And so there was massive alignment between what he wanted and what I was able to do. And that's the key thing, right?
Yeah, I think like you said, it links back to that trust, but then autonomy, right? Because if you're aligned, then you can give, like you said, Chris, like you sit on one.
Yeah.
He's he's the opposite end of the continuum when you think about an
Yeah.
idiot. So the fact that he's doing that shows that trust there, and that enables you to autonomously go out and do what you do best, I guess, as a team.
Yeah.
I guess on the flip side of that question would be, is there a moment where everything's gone wrong and you've maybe metaphorically got a kick in the pants?
Yeah, there's loads of those. There's loads of those. I don't even know where to start. I think the job I took in between TT and TCI, and within 3 months, I was like, what have I done? I literally lost all my confidence. Literally.
Wow.
I was misled on my compensation. So I was panicking every month about being able to pay my bills.
Okay.
I hated the place.
When you say the place, was it like the culture or vibe?
Yeah,
or
everything. The culture was awful, very nepotistic,
Yeah.
not rewards based, around sort of ability, but around sort of who knew who, what background you're from, all the rest of it. So it just was not for me. But I made
The opposite of what we've been talking about then in terms of meritocracy and trust.
100%. I made some great friends there, though. But when you're in those situations, you have to sort of think, what do you do? And I always remember, things that people say to me, sometimes you just need to stand in the rain, right? Or the before sunlight is the darkest part of the night, right? So you sort of say, okay, this has all happened for a reason. I'm quite fatalist like that, and I still believe in that everything happens for a reason, and you take away something from it and you learn from it, even if it's a bad experience, because it'll either make you stronger or make you realize things don't always go the way that you want them to go, and you get a reality check on things. And we all make mistakes.
I think one of the things as well is like sometimes when you're in those moments where you're like, I really don't like this, it points you towards what you do like, because the opposite of what that is probably where you should be.
100%, 100%. That's exactly right. And I think about that even when in building relationships with people, when I meet loads and loads of investors. I know we're not going to be right for 95% of them, but it doesn't matter. The thing is, you built a relationship with them, even if they don't invest with you, you have a link, and that's the kind of important thing to sort of think about. So yeah, there was that, and then 2008 was so tough, so tough. I joke with loads of my friends who do, what I do, investor relations, business development, helping people build their businesses, and they're like, "Oh, my guy's having a really tough time, my guy." I said, listen, I was representing 5 guys who were down 50%. When you're in that situation, then tell me. And everyone's like, no, that I can't even imagine what that must have been like. And so I've got bullet holes in me still to prove from that.
Imagine.
But you build such strong relationships in those times. You imagine, you're in the war zone and you're building some of the strongest relationships you have, and you're remembering those relationships today, and you're speaking to people
Absolutely.
about those times and how tough it was, but you survive and you come through them, and you sort of able to say, oh, you remember when this happened, you remember when that happened, and how stressed we were and all the things we're talking about. So
And it maybe links back to what you were saying earlier in terms of is it Mark and David being quite tough on you
yeah,
in terms of that, like that adversity certainly bonds people and you
totally.
go through tough times together.
Totally. It really does. It really does. And I think people forget that. It really does bond you. But you don't realize this stuff at the time. Okay. It's kind of when you go on a school trip, or you think back about your year at school, or your holiday you had, you actually appreciate it afterwards, not really when you're there. You're in the moment when you're there. When you get married, you're just getting married, but afterwards, yes, you enjoy it. But when you look back and you reflect on it, you sort of think about all those amazing moments and things that happened and how they impacted you, and wow, this and wow, that, and oh my goodness. And that's when you sort of go back and think, yeah, wow, that was really, really amazing. It was a special time. And, sometimes you wish you could capture all of that on a movie. I mean, when you talk to people today, young people particularly, about doing investor relations, business development in the late 90s, and then the noughties and the 10s and now the 20s. You talk about the journey of how it's all evolved and changed. They sometimes don't believe you when you tell them the things that used to go on and how it used to work. But it was there's always good and bad, right? Every experience, every decade, every journey, every year. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that one. One of the things I'd love to ask you is about you've had this incredible career, and it sounds like you're as hungry as ever. And the thing that jumps out for me is the humility when you talked about earlier, when you mentioned about analog, and still you're at the stage in the career and with your track record, which is ridiculous, that you're still wanting to jump on flights, get there face to face, do that stuff. The humility in that I think is incredible, but it's also demanding. And it's an incredibly demanding, incredibly competitive environment you've been performing in. How do you, because the other side of competing and performing is rest and recovery
Yeah.
to sustain that. How do you do that? What are the ways in which you sort of flick the off switch and detach and restore, or do you?
I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at it. Having kids, that changes that for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I'm getting better at it. I used to be terrible at it. I used to be terrible at it, but I'm getting better at it now. And when
Is
I
that because
travel,
the children forced you? Is it like a constraint that forces you to sort of take?
it's not a constraint. I think it's a responsibility, and I feel
Okay.
that I need to make sure that I give them time, and I'm in the right mindset and with the right energy to make sure that I'm there for them. So that's kind of really, really important. But I think I just used to think, yeah, I can keep going and keep going. And I can, but you get to a point you're like, I can't do this anymore. I need to stop. The good thing is when I travel, I really sleep. Uh, I mean, I really sleep. I really am able to take time out for myself to recover and all those sorts of things. So the irony of it is, even though I'm on a plane or doing things and traveling, I get a lot of time to myself. So that's probably the best time that I get. And I'm getting better at relaxing when I go on holiday than I used to be. I'm learning. I'm learning.
No, isn't it?
The objective of this year is to sleep more.
Yeah, can't do you any harm, that's for sure.
Exactly. So I do that. I love Peloton. to do that regularly. And then my big thing is concerts. I love live music, so I go to concerts all the time. So
Brilliant.
at least 2 or 3 a month. So yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
Fantastic. And look, if I had to ask you sort of greatest memory from your career, I know you've obviously shared a few.
Just there's so many. I mean, there's the obvious things which are like, okay, you won a client, you won some money, you did a big fundraise, things like that. Those are sort of all amazing. I think the 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 biggest memories are just being with the people that you love being with. I think it sounds so corny, but I think that's really, and I think that has really probably culminated in the things that I'm doing now with TED Sides, where I'm finally able to sort of bring all of the relationships and the things that I love doing together into a visible format.
I was going to ask you about that because I
Yeah.
wanted to ask what at this stage of your career, what is most important to you and what are some of the things that you're most excited about coming into 2025?
Look, I'll say it like everyone who's advancing their careers, they want to be relevant, right? Everyone wants to be relevant. So I'm not going to do that. But I think it's all about learning, growing, and evolving. You can have your principles and your values, which stay static, but to stay relevant, you've got to continue to evolve and move. I think that's really important. But you've also got to be able to stand out. So you're trying to do two things at once.
Hmm.
Trying to say, right, remember me, I'm still here. I'm still doing lots of interesting things, but also just having the ability to contact and communicate people. So I would say to people who start out in this industry doing what I do is never ever build a relationship based on trying to fulfill a transaction. Because you know what? That's just going to make you focus on what's happening now. You have to build a relationship with the view that you can call that person in 20 years' time and they'll pick up the phone. Right? Because if you do that, then you can build a relationship with them where you're talking about lots of different things and able to speak to them about many, many things. One of the people that's manifests itself with that is Anna Marshall, who's the CIO of the Hewlett Foundation, who I've worked with the Hewlett Foundation since 1998, and I've worked with her for 20 years. But she's been such an amazing friend to me personally and an incredible client. And we always talk about ideas and investments. I've worked with different managers, whatever, and she has invested with firms I work with or firms I've worked at 10 times.
Wow.
Right. And it's just having that ability to pick up the phone, call, have a conversation, and understand what's going on. And I gave
relationships.
Exactly. That's all it's about. And so to me, it's just never forgetting that that is what's important here. Having the ability to pick up the phone, call people, have a relationship. Because people just don't think like that anymore. They're always about, right, where's the next deal coming from? Where's the next deal coming
Very
from?
transactional, isn't it? And you can almost feel it. It feels horrible, doesn't it, when you're on the wrong end of that? Yeah.
Exactly. And you know it. If you and I on the receiving end of it and you get a cold call from a number on your phone, they just want to try and sell you something. They're not interested in anything else. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the project with Ted, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So Ted is a legend in our industry. He used to work at the Yale Endowment. I met him when he co-founded the first seeding fund of funds called Protégé Partners, and he invested in one of the funds on the TCO platform. So we've known each other for 20 years, and he left Protégé. We stayed in touch on and off, and then he asked me to go on his podcast. I said no a number of times, and then we kept on talking, and I went on, and that was just the beginning of just magic happening. We just started speaking every week, and then during COVID, a few clients asked for a few things. One of them was one of our clients who were doing some work on the diversity space. And they said, oh, can you put us in contact with people in this space? I said, look, forget that. Why don't you let me pull together a day of content for you with Ted, and we'll pull something together. And we did. And on the back of that was formed an organization called IADEI, for Institutional Allocators for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, which has about 800 institutional allocators all over the world that invest in the diverse managers, minority-owned managers, minority-led managers. And then we did that again, and we did that again for different people, for different causes. And out of that was born Capital Allocators University, so which is effectively a platform that brings together, historically, it was actually just LPs who know how to invest, but they're reminded of the ancillary skills they need to do their job. You know, how to network, how to ask questions, how to be a good leader, things like that, how to network. And we did that. We've done 6 cohorts of it now. It's 30 to 50 people at a time. We did the first 2 cohorts online, then we've done 4 in person. We just did one for investor relations and business development people in New York, which went really well. We're going to do another one of that. Then we started talking about conferences, because loads of clients used to complain to me about the conferences they went to. They're too big, it's somewhere difficult to get to, you have no input into the agenda, we don't know who's going. So let's turn the model on its head. Let's make them small. Let's let them decide who comes. Let's send them the agenda. Let's make it somewhere easy to get to. And we did. We emailed 50 CIOs, said, if we did something, would you come along? And they all said yes. And we did 3 last year, we did 2 the year before, and we got 4 this year.
Wow.
It's been incredible. But again, they're not.
It sounds so obvious when you say it like that, by the way.
It does.
To actually ask the question and just what do they.
But they just want to have time together. They want to learn. They want to feel free to be vulnerable and to be able to exchange ideas and to be in a safe space to share concerns they have. Just have group discussions. That's what we do. We don't sit there with, panels of, huge rooms with them hearing from investment banks about what's going on with the US economy. They don't need that. They know that stuff already. And then we've sort of set up an advisory business where we're helping managers think about their strategy and their firm and their branding and how to think about approaching investors, what works, what doesn't work, what's going on, trends and stuff like we're seeing. So loads of stuff going on. It's really, really great. And that to me has been really, I think, the culmination of, 27 years.
Feels like it's almost, the perfect next step in the journey. It's almost consolidating the academic learning, the thing that you clearly got sincere interest in, but then the people plus the industry specific feels like a perfect fusion for you.
Exactly. And what's good is the various formats of output, So university, summits, advisory. So you've got the one-on-one time, you've got the smaller group times, and then you've got the bigger events with smaller groups in them. So you're able to have different levels of output with different types of people. So your peers, your people you look up to, who are people you're working with, who are your prospects, who are your clients and things like that. And then people are on their journey. So it's really interesting, really, really.
Amazing. One of the things I have to ask Rahul as well is philanthropy, you give a lot of time, effort, resource to support a number of causes. Can I ask, what's important to you about that?
So I learned that from my mum. Always said, there's always people that are better off than you and people that are worse off than you. So you should always help people. It's just the right thing to do. So that's always been instilled in me as a kid. My mum, it's really important to her. So she's always been such a kind person. So I learned that from her. And then I think from the age of 11, I was doing charity stuff.
Okay.
And it's just always been part of who I am. And one of the great things for me going to work for TCI was taking all my studies in development, international relations, and the things I was interested in with a guy who was giving money to good causes and being able to do my finance stuff together. So it's the culmination of the two coming together. And I just saw kind of the stuff that you can do if you want to do it and you have the means to do it. And it actually started off in a bigger way when I left TCI. And one of the people that worked for me said she didn't want to work in finance anymore. And she wanted to go on and do charity work. And so she wanted to do an event for WizKids, which was works with disabled young kids, provide mobility equipment. And she put an event and I helped to raise half the money for that. Sold half the tables for that event, and Whiskers just started to rope me in, and I loved what they were doing, and they asked me to be on their board. I said no, and then they came back, so you can't say no, and then slowly over time I got more comfortable, and that was the start of it all, really. Um, so look, I work with so many amazing organizations. There's always amazing organizations. All the organizations are amazing, but it's the people that really pull you
Comes
in.
back to that again. Yeah.
It does, because all causes are good, but ultimately it's the people you're working with that are going to determine who you work with, why you work with them, how you work with them. So one of the best things that I love doing every year is getting a lot of the causes I work with, whether I'm on the board or I support, and some of my friends in the industry, and pulling all these charity people. It's like a goodness gathering. Um, Once a year, we just did it in December. And we had just under 30 of us in the room. It's just great. We have some teaching, we have some external speakers coming, and then everyone's just free to share kind of what's going on, what they're worried about, what the key concerns there are in their organization, who should they go to, and it's a safe space. And there's so much cross-pollination between these charities
Yeah.
that we don't take advantage of, and so it's just trying to really play on that.
Amazing. I've got one last big question for you. And that is, if you could drill one message into people listening to this, people who perhaps want more from themselves and know deep down that they've got more to give, but maybe they've had a little wobble, or, there's something holding them back, what would your message to them be?
Always believe in yourself,
Okay.
because every time you fall down, you just got to get back up. You never ever learn from the things that go right. You learn from the things that go wrong.
Brilliant.
So that's really what I would say. It's the We all have fears, and I have fears all the time. I make mistakes every day. The fear of something is always quite often bigger than the actual thing itself. So the reality is, if you try something, it doesn't work, the worst thing that's going to happen is it's not going to work. That's the worst thing. You're not going to die. Your family's not going to go missing or anything like that. The reality is it's just not going to happen. So you know what? You move on, you try again. That's it. And you think
Brilliant.
about the most successful people in the world, they've all succeeded because they've tried and tried and tried again. They're just not taking no for an answer.
Brilliant. I'll normally finish, Rahul, with a few quick fire questions. So if
Sure.
you don't mind,
Yeah.
favorite movie?
Ah, I'm probably too embarrassed to say so. I
Don't be
think
shy.
there's wow. I mean, there's so many. I mean, Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
Just the power of friendship and resilience, right? Just overcoming everything.
Brilliant. That makes a lot of sense. Do you have a favorite series?
Again, I can't even think about
Yeah, no worries.
RuPaul's Drag Race. Oh, I
Excellent.
think you just see all these people overcoming sort of tough growing up, and sort of
Yeah,
learning who they are, what they want to be, and getting their families buy-in and all the rest of it. Finding out where they want to be in the world and who they want to become, really. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that makes sense. Favorite book?
Um, Finding Ultra by um, Rich Rolls.
Okay.
Because again, it's a journey of someone. You read this book and you start going, wow, this guy's amazing. I want to support him.
Yeah,
Then you get to this point, you hate him, then you love him, then you feel sorry for him, then you're inspired by him. It's like the most amazing book. And then Ikigai, which is sort of the
yes.
Japanese concept of how you should live your life.
Yeah,
But
great
Rich
book.
Roll definitely is the book. I think I bought 300 copies of that book over the last 10 years and given them to people. It's one of the best
Wow.
books I've ever read.
Yeah, it's a great story for anyone that hasn't read it. Do you have a favorite quote or saying?
So professionally, I would say never be an asshole. You meet everyone
Yeah.
twice. But I would say people might not remember what you said or what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Okay, that is
That's
powerful.
the
Yeah.
my Angelou quote.
Okay. Love that. Is there a greatest leader of all time for you?
Um, I mean, there are many. I'll probably say over time there's more and more and more, but I would say the first person I probably got inspired by when I was young, that my dad probably put in front of me, is Mahatma Gandhi, just because he was he was a young guy when, he independence happened. He was 18 years old when India got made independent. So he used to go and listen to his rallies. I think just the power of truth and peaceful.
Yeah, what an example there.
Yeah, exactly. And also, things he would say, we want to see the British off as friends, not, there was no animosity or anything
That was
like that.
incredible. What an
Yeah,
incredible example.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And is there a greatest team of all time in terms of a sports team or an investment team or
But I mean, there are so many legendary investment teams. I mean, sports teams, I think when you're a kid, especially in the UK in the 80s and stuff, you just remember Kevin Keegan, Glenn Hoddle, all these are the guys when you're a kid, you're just sort of inspired to you, and all of the teams that they were part of, the Arsenals, the Liverpools, the Manchester United stuff
yeah,
when you're growing up in the 80s and 90s were just,
yeah, something else?
they're all still amazing, but there was just, again, it's kind of like the guys I grew up with in the industry. They were just revolutionaries at that time. They took it to a different level,
Do you
right?
think there is an investment team? Because if anyone can perhaps have an opinion on that, surely you're up there. There was a panel for that award. You're on that. I mean, is there a team, an investment team that stands out as being head and shoulders for performance, but also perhaps standards and process that you really admire?
Look,
I
I think
imagine there'll be lots, but
this I mean, the team I worked at TCI when I was there, I mean, it's just from a GP perspective, just unbelievable. And
yeah,
then you think about the team at Yale with David Swenson, Dean Takahashi, Seth Alexander, Rob Wallace, um, Peter Ammon, Lisa Howie, Randy Kim, Jay Kang, all those people went on to become amazing CIOs, like just unbelievable. And then Carnegie Corporation, the your oldest foundation in the world, where Ellen Schuman came on and she took Kim Lu, Meredith Jenkins, Alyssa Moll, and those guys just went on to all take over the world. So, those are the Warren Buffetts
yeah.
um, of their eras and their stables. Just incredible. You when those things are happening, you don't realize they're happening. It's only afterwards when you look back and you say, "Wow, what just happened?"
Such an interesting point,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
So it's going back to the point, when you're at a party, you're in the party, or at a wedding, you're in the wedding, but it's afterwards you realize and go, wow, that was amazing. Look what happened, look what we achieved, whatever. So I think that's the beautiful thing about it. And it's tangible, you're able to see the results as well, right?
And talk about it
And talk about it.
with
Yeah,
those amazing people.
yeah.
Rahul, thank you so much for giving up your time. What a conversation! Some really powerful messages in there, and I'm so grateful for you to share the wealth. Some serious knowledge there that I'm certainly going to be starting to put to work immediately.
Thank you.
Whilst I hope you've enjoyed our conversation, the magic happens when you put the principles to work by aligning yourself with them. People who listen to podcasts like this tend to fall into one of two categories. The first experiences a high that fades, and before they know it, it's back to business as usual. Nothing changes. The second group, your group, also feel the high, but they sustain it and go on to achieve significant change. What distinguishes the two? Putting these lessons or principles to work immediately. This is potentially game-changing information. I've seen it, but it can't change anything if you don't act on it. Remember, this is not just for accelerating excellence, but also for maximizing your quality of life. There is always a way to optimize, and the secret to becoming everything you can be is to just start. So, if something resonated with you in this conversation, act on it. Excellence is just a series of days repeated over and over again. So go on the attack and win your day. Chances are you know someone that needs to listen to this conversation. Please make sure to share a link with them and keep me updated with how you get on. Make sure you slam any questions in the comments or reach out directly. I've got you covered. In 2021, I published my first book, Accelerating Excellence. If you're finding the conversations and information on this podcast useful, you're going to find the book useful. The book is more of an operation manual. It's a step-by-step guide on how to implement all this stuff so you can get maximum benefit. It's a #1 bestseller filled with highly actionable strategies you can apply today to become better tomorrow. Head to jamesaking.com to download 6 chapters free in audio or digital format. The full book's available on Amazon, Audible, or at your local bookstore. All links are in the show notes. The game has changed. The players have changed. The hard truth is it has become harder to identify elite performers to drive your organization forward and ignite a winning mentality within today's workforce. Without the right talent, without the right mentality, and without the right performance systems to deliver these, outlier performance will remain your goal, not your reality. At A6 Partners, we solve this problem every day in the most demanding arenas. The talent, the mentality, it's there. It is possible. Our performance systems are not designed to tick boxes, tolerate bias, or ensure comfort. They are designed to ensure performance where performance is all that matters. We embed elite performance systems to attract and select the right people and develop and motivate those people. From short, sharp, sledgehammer, intensive change programs, right through to long-term sustained partnership. We work with our partners to transition your organization into a magnet for elite talent and embed a systematic process for selecting winners. We build world-class development programs to transform raw talent into sustained high performance. We instill winning cultures that set and live by their own demanding standards, resulting in a team of autonomous, high-performing, and resilient problem solvers who deliver. Our team of consultants is comprised of the outlier individuals I've worked with firsthand over decades. This includes PhD performance scientists, senior British and American Special Forces operators, Olympic gold medal winning coaches, world leading psychologists, and C-level leaders from trading and investing. For us, second place is not an option. If you're sick to death of mediocrity and truly want your team to excel, then click the link in show notes and get in touch now. When was the last time you launched yourself out your comfort zone? Here's your chance to do exactly that. On May the 17th, we're entering an Accelerating Excellence team at the London Spartan Trifecta weekend. I want you on that team. It's free, but spots are limited, so you're going to need to act fast. This is all powered by my pal, Joe DeSena, the founder of Spartan, multiple New York Times best-selling author, and the ultimate advocate for doing hard things. You'll be racing alongside myself, guests from this podcast, and some of my peer group from trading, investing, elite military, and sport. We don't care what your current state of fitness or life is. In fact, the lower the better. The thing I love most about events like Spartan is that they provide us with an opportunity to voluntarily confront challenge, physically and mentally. This means you don't have to wait for life to inevitably slam one your way before you decide to level up. It's an opportunity to carve out your own mind and emerge stronger from challenge than you went in. On race day, I'll be hosting an exclusive Q&A session where we'll discuss everything elite performance. Spots are limited and they're going fast. Don't overthink it. Click the link in the show notes now and sign up as an individual with a friend, partner, your team, or company. By doing so, you instantly become part of an ambitious, like-minded team of people who set high standards and attack challenges head on. Get it done now, and I'll see you on the 17th of May.